The numbers are in. Less people than ever watched SEC football in 2025. The Wicked Witch is dead. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction on the SEC dropping like flies when it comes to viewership in 2025. The numbers are in, and they're not good of the Southeastern Conference, which is great for us. And then Greg Sankey, there are cracks. Ole Miss tampering, LSU tampering, South Carolina, all of these schools tampering, and the SEC is falling apart because they will not do anything about it. The NCAA is leaning on the SEC to make a move, and they won't. Greg Sankey's job as commissioner is in serious doubt right now. And again, that instability is good for the Big 12. And finally, there's a BYU source, a very popular BYU reporter who's proposing a new way that we decide who makes the college football playoff that would give BYU a bid in 2025 and possibly again in 2026 in the same way we give basketball teams bids. I'll explain more. It's pretty interesting. All of that, again, with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction, and all that coming up right now. If you hit subscribe, I can keep my job. TJ, let's do it.
Drake, some interesting numbers came out on the teams and really the conferences that were watched the most this year. Maybe the most surprising part of that, the conference that barely made this list.
Yeah, TJ, the best part of this whole deal, if you're a Big 12 fan, if you're an ACC fan, if you're a Big 10 fan, especially a Big 10 fan, is that the SEC was sparse, namely SEC versus SEC games. If you look at the top 50 most watched games this year, you don't see near as much Southeastern Conference as one would expect. And especially if you look at the top 10 most watched games in 2025, 4 of the top 5, those are Big 10 games. 8 of the top 10 are Big 10 games. 3 of the top 10 are Big 10 versus Big 10. Just 2 are SEC versus SEC. More than ever, people are watching the Big 10. They're watching it. Why? Because of Indiana, because of new blood, because of new noise, because of new logos in the college football playoff, and they're not watching the SEC. Where 3 years ago, the common take would be, oh yeah, people love watching Georgia play Alabama. Oh, sweet, they're going to love it when Texas plays against Texas A&M. Oh, they're going to kill for Oklahoma versus Kentucky. They didn't. They're not. It's not appointment television. Just because you slap a ranking next to Tennessee or Missouri, just because you put a number next to South Carolina to start the year, does not mean people actually want to watch those teams. The SEC right now, TJ, they are scrambling in their front office for a lot of reasons. This is one of them. When marketing is so big, when brands are so big, when TV revenue is so big, TJ, networks are losing money because they had overinvested in college football and they overinvested on the SEC. ESPN bought a ton of stock in the Southeastern Conference. I think we've had this conversation a few times now, but the SEC is ESPN's baby. TJ, remember what happened when the MLB was ESPN's baby? The same MLB that is going by the wayside and dying. What about the NBA? Isn't that ESPN's? Oh, that's right, record low viewership. Surely hockey's doing what? No, it's not. TJ, the only thing ESPN can't get its paws on is the NFL. And guess how well NFL numbers are doing right now? Through the roof.
I wonder if some of this, I think there are multiple things that you have to think about and consider when you think about the SEC product. I think the league has somewhat, in an attempt to get better, they've somewhat watered themselves down.
Yeah.
And they still have, listen, let's be fair, a ton of talent and a bunch of good teams.
It's the second best league in the country, right? Like objectively the second best by a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could probably have a very serious argument on like team for team how much the depth once you get to the bottom of the conferences starts to stack up. And somebody from the Southeast is going to argue one way, somebody from the Midwest or the North is going to argue the other. But I do think it's a good conversation. Once you get down, I'm talking once you get down to like teams like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, like in that range. I don't really find a lot of value in, well, Mississippi State would beat Rutgers. Like, I don't care about that. So you can have that argument. The SEC is still a really good product. However, I think by adding Texas and Oklahoma, what they did was they added, what was Texas's record in conference? Well, they had 2 conference losses. So there was 6 wins, right? What was Oklahoma's record in conference? They had 2 losses. So that was 6 more wins. They just gave their conference 12 more losses by adding Texas and Oklahoma. Those wins have to come from somewhere. And so you're not seeing as many insanely high ranked matchups between the SEC teams late in the year because they've objectively made their conference tougher. I think that's a big deal that is somewhat overlooked. And I at what benefit? Right? Like what was the
I don't want to push back, TJ, but I do want to.
I'm good with pushback. We don't have to agree.
Well, they made it tougher. But when they made it tougher, teams did not rise. They didn't rise to the occasion. Georgia didn't rise to the occasion. Bama didn't rise. When the Big Ten got tougher, Ohio State rose to the occasion and went 12-0. Indiana rose to the occasion and went 12-0. When things got tougher, when Oregon was added, when Washington came in, or USC, the Big Ten responded with the best of the best playing at their best. The SEC crumbled at the top. That's why this is a big problem.
Yeah, they almost created a situation where teams have to lose games. Like every time in college football past 1995, I believe, there's a winner and loser to every game. There are no more ties. And they just created more losses for themselves, especially by adding in power brands, former Big 12 brands, Texas and Oklahoma, like teams that were not going to be down forever, especially in this NIL era. I think the other side of it, more so than probably just adding good teams that watered down the overall eliteness of the conference, is the way that the SEC has been shoved down everybody's throat. Back in 2008, so I live in Central Florida, and the team that I cheer for, their biggest rival, was really good back in 2008. I don't know if you've heard of them. Nobody hated the SEC back then. Yeah. Nobody. Like there wasn't and Saban and those guys had just won in 2000. Like they had just won at LSU. Bama was just about to go on their run. Nobody hated the SEC in that moment. You know when people started hating the SEC? Was when it was force-fed down your throat every single day without fail. And that's where I think that it's not only the product is just not as elite as it used to be, where you had to watch it, but it's also people are like, dude, we're tired of hearing about it. And we want to see something new. Look at the ratings between the teams that played in the national championships this year versus last year. The ratings were off the charts for Indiana and Miami, or Indiana, Miami. Last year we had Notre Dame and Ohio State that didn't touch these ratings. Correct. And that's not to crap on those fan bases, but I do think people like something new. They don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. Ohio State's always there. Georgia's always there. Bama was always there. The SEC's always there. So those two things factoring in would guess, ratings down a little bit.
Well, let's also consider that when Georgia plays, Bama plays, which that was a national championship, by the way, people watched. They didn't watch like they did Indiana. They didn't watch that great. They didn't watch LSU and Clemson, TJ, like they watched Indiana and Miami. And you told me that LSU team, not you, but people, told me that LSU team is the greatest team to ever grace college football. By and large, ever say that, I think it's a correlation, of specific correlation with the true fallout came when ESPN grabbed the SEC from CBS. It was no longer da 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 da.
The best intro in college sports.
This stoic, beautiful afternoon. You're looking live. Like, yeah, all right, come on, bring it. This is Mississippi State versus Texas A&M. Like it just felt good. Now it feels like a grift. Like it insists upon itself. And because of that, it's really hard for people to watch. It's a product that if they just kind of shut up about it and just did the football, no one would complain, and they might watch it more. But you turn on every SEC game on ESPN, and it's It's why I hate the noon game on ESPN, because they'll be like, hey, and coming up at 3:30, Alabama, Texas A&M, and it's 7:30, Kentucky and Georgia. You're like, oh, great. Could you please tell me something not SEC for a second? Like, can we please acknowledge, I get it's on Fox, but Ohio State, Penn State play tonight. Can you just talk about it a little bit? And they won't. And that's why the product's dying.
I think people get tired of the same old thing. They get tired of it being rammed down their throat, pause, for just way, again, in 08, as much as I hate UF, nobody hated the SEC. They hate the SEC because of the media marketing machine that's behind it. And hopefully, since every major conference and Notre Dame have now been in a national title more recently than the SEC, maybe some of that will start to chill out a little bit. Maybe when the draft happens and the Big Ten and ACC may have, dominate the first round with the guys that will get picked up from Ohio State and Miami and different places, maybe some of that will chill out. Maybe not, though. Maybe we'll be back doing the same thing again next year. So,
hey, everybody, today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You knew it. You could have seen it coming. It's FanDuel. FanDuel is exactly where I go for the Super Bowl. That's exactly right. The Super Bowl, you can bet on FanDuel.com, the FanDuel app, and it's super easy. Last call for football. One final Sunday, the NFL season officially coming to a close. Super Bowl 60. FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of the action. Same game parlay. Everyone's been waiting for it. Predictions turn into plays. Perfect way to cap off the season. And if you're a new customer, bet just $5. Get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started and do it today.
Talk about a guy born on third base, but Greg Sankey, is he fumbling? Like, is this Leon Lett? Is this Cowboys at the 1 yard line? How he is fumbling the job as what should have been the easiest job of any commissioner in college sports?
This is Don Beebe chasing you down, baby, the fastest white guy in sports. And he's chasing down Greg Sankey rapidly. There are legitimate questions about whether or not Greg Sankey is the proper leader for the SEC and if he'll be in that role much longer. Pat Ford is the one who originally wrote the column on this that says Alabama and Ole Miss are allegedly flouting NCAA rules with impunity. Coming on the heels of the Lane Kiffin free-for-all and another underwhelming football season, is it time to wonder about Greg Sankey's grip on the SEC? And the answer is yes. He has lost complete control of that conference. They have not been to the national championship in 3 years, 3 consecutive seasons for a league that, yes, insists upon itself and has told you for the last 2 decades of the best league in college football. That has been passed over. Paul Feinbaum, because he has the all power and the all-knowing authority to pass it over. Gave it to the Big Ten a couple of weeks ago during his show. And now the finger is being pointed at a commissioner who is just lame ducking it out. Who, when the NCAA says, hey, we need someone to be a leader in the room here because we can't police all of your conferences with complete depth. Hey, Greg Sankey, could you just act, do something, move, be sentient? He said no. The Bediako situation with Alabama, Sankey, nowhere to be found. The Pete Golding situation, tampering with Clemson, silence, radio silence. You are not seeing from Greg Sankey any accountability for the coaches, for the players, for the teams, for the system, and that is a commissioner who is lost. All of the signs are there, TJ, and now some of the biggest writers in college football are asking about it. How do you have endless scandal, endless tampering? You've got coaches like Nate Oates, who 3 weeks ago said, oh, please never give pro players an opportunity in the NCAA. It's ruining the sport. And now he's got a guy who signed an NBA contract playing on the court for him. There is a lack, not just of accountability, but a lack, TJ, a lack of authority. There is no control at the top of the SEC, and it is slowly but surely breaking down around Greg Sankey. And I say slowly but surely, it's faster and faster by the day now. As new scandals pop up and Sankey cannot handle them, the Pete Golding one being kind of the shining star, and dead silence from the commissioner, no accountability from the commissioner, no babysitting, which is what he should be doing at this point to damage control. When you're getting nothing from the guy in charge, it gives no confidence that the league's in a good spot. And especially, you and I talked about it in another video, with TV ratings down and the SEC not competing at the top of college football, Questions are being asked, fingers are being pointed, and Greg Sankey is dead silent. That is a bad sign for a conference that is not in a good spot.
Can I tell you something? I don't know if you realize this or not. The outside world looks at Greg Sankey and they're like, what the heck are you doing? Can I tell you that some people internally think the same thing? Some SEC programs very much think the same thing. They are very, no matter what your thoughts are on the 9-game schedule that the SEC is implementing, they don't love it. People inside of the conference do not love this, and they're frustrated by it. And
Can I ask you a question based on that?
Sure. Yeah.
So Greg Sankey, he's always done what he wants to do, right? And typically it's with the SEC's best interest at heart. No one made him go to 9 games, TJ.
At all.
They just had 5 teams make the playoff. Why'd they do that?
Here's what, and we talked about this again in the last video. They've watered down their conference by adding Texas and Oklahoma. Other teams have not risen to the occasion, was the point that you brought up, like Ohio State, Indiana, Michigan have the last few years. You know what they just did by adding a 9th game? They just added 8 more losses.
Yeah.
They added 8 more. Like, there are 16 teams. There will be a 9th game. They just added 9 or 8 more losses. And they get the benefit of the doubt right now. Like we said, they got 5 of the 12 teams in. When you think about it and you remove the 5 auto bids, how many at-larges were there this year? They got 4 of them, right? So I don't know that they're in the best spot possible for adding a game right now without some kind of assurances of like, hey, your SEC schedule is going to mean more. Well, they told us the strength of schedule was going to mean more, but how do we really know that that's the case if we're inside the SEC? I know that SEC folks aren't even thrilled with him doing that. The 9-game schedule was supposed to help him have the leverage to go to Petiti and say, okay, well, here's the playoff system I want, because they can't agree on that, 16 versus 24. Yeah. It's kind of the idea of like, hey, Drake, give me $100 and then I'll let you know if I'm going to go get your car washed or not. And so you Venmo me the $100 and you're like, hey, you ready to go wash my car? And I'm like, I don't know, man. What do you think about washing my car now that I already have your $100? And so, as stupid as that comparison is, he doesn't have his leverage to now tell Tony Petiti, you have to go to the playoff structure that I want, which is the 16. The teams don't love the 9-game inside. The ratings are down. And then it's scandal everywhere. You know why you can't say anything about Ole Miss? Because Lane Kiffin's down the road in Baton Rouge doing the same thing to Ole Miss that Ole Miss is doing to Clemson. So how does he call out Pete Golding? Because Pete was dumb enough to send text messages, maybe. But how does he call out Pete Golding and then not go call out Lane Kiffin? Well, it was very well publicized that Jaden Ball, the running back at Florida, was considering Texas. His name never entered the portal. This is happening everywhere in the SEC and everywhere in general, right? Like, it's not just the SEC that's tampering. But just zero leadership. The guy was like, we all joke about it, but the SEC, if there was one thing they were great at, which they won 7 titles in a row, they were great at that too. Yep. But if there was one thing they were great at, it was marketing. It was the brand of their conference. We all know the phrase and we all make fun of it. It just means more. But you know what? That was good marketing. And they had a conference that the marketing machine ran itself, and he's pissing all that away.
Yeah. Hey, look, when I started hosting Locked On Big 12 3 years ago, I mean, wasn't a very good time to host Locked On Big 12. You know, you're wondering, will the league be alive? Are we going to die? Where are we going to go? And the SEC was dominating anything and everything. The SEC got all that it wanted. It had all the exposure. The CBS deal was up. ESPN had bought it for $1 billion. Here's even more money. How in the world did they just watch that wither away? How did they crap away more money, more opportunity, the silver spoon just completely in hand, and they threw the silver spoon across the room and said, nope, we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot and make this whole thing as embarrassing as possible and burn it down from the inside. Like, it's coming from inside the house. Yeah. No one's doing this to them. The Big 12 didn't kill them. They are actually, it's the Eric Andre meme where he shoots the guy and says, I can't believe this happened. Who do we blame for doing this? You did this to yourself. And now the SEC is meeting the ramifications of that, and Greg Sankey's in the crossfires.
You think he's the commissioner when we do this in January of 2027?
Oof. I think he probably is. There's a good chance he is, because there's a lot you got to go through to get him to step down or fire him. But I think by then the conversation will have heated up so much he doesn't have a very long leash past that.
If they don't win if they don't make it to the title game in 27, which is a crapshoot, and teams always rise and fall.
Texas Tech versus BYU coming through both sides of the bracket to the title. Gosh. Come on.
Notre Dame goes back. Miami goes back. Any of that stuff. That is not going to be. And again, they had 5 teams in. And they got the benefit of playing Tulane first. And then they got games against each other so that they didn't just automatically take losses to other teams. Not a great time to be Greg Sankey, but, he gets paid very well, and I would trade my problems for his problems. So I guess it's not the worst time to be Greg Sankey, just not the best.
Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. There is a reason, and a very clear reason, why I love Mazda. And it's where this passion, drive, style, they all kind of meet in one intersection with Mazda, who is moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. This week, 2,000 points for Audie Crooks, the Iowa State women's basketball star. It reminds us what we need to do, what it takes to raise the bar. It's the extra work off the court, dialing it in, every detail, giving the extra fire and that grit for I Never Quit. We put the same passion into every model. Highlights make the real. What it took to get there makes it count. That's more to a Mazda. Always more to a Mazda, because there's more to you with Mazda.
Football has a very interesting way that they value teams. It's very political. It's always been very political. However, if we stepped outside of the gridiron for just a moment and looked over to the way that hoops evaluates teams, that would have been really good news for a football team this season.
TJ, if you mean bad when you say interesting, you're correct. You're right there. You've landed the plane. It's bad. The way that we rank teams, the way that we rank resumes, the way that we judge college football teams, because you said, hey, strength of record matters. Well, BYU had better strength of record than Notre Dame and Miami. Well, strength of schedule matters. Well, BYU had a better strength of schedule than Notre Dame and Miami. Well, wins matter. BYU had more wins than both of them. If we can't figure out a way to do resumes, Spencer Linton has a really good answer. Now, Spencer is with BYU TV. Does a great job with BYU TV. And so this comes from a BYU guy, which makes a lot of sense. He breaks down how in college basketball, they use the net ranking. Quad 1, Quad 2, Quad 3, Quad 4. A win in Quad 1 is obviously far better than a win in Quad 4. A loss in Quad 4 is devastating in your chances for making March Madness. It's how they break this up to judge which team is best based on their strength of schedule and based on quads. And they're mostly based on KenPom or your net rating. Well, what he's done is based on a Massey rating, and Massey's very popular in college football. Actually, so popular, TJ, that some conferences use Massey as like their 7th tiebreaker. Let's just ask the computer from Massey who's the better team and send them to our conference championship based on the tiebreaker. So what they've broken down here, Spencer's done. If you did this like basketball and had Quad 1, a Quad 1 win would be a home win against any team ranked 1 through 25. A Quad 1 win would be a neutral site victory over any team 1 through 30. A Quad 1 win would be an away victory against any team 1 through 40. And then Quad 2 goes to 41 through 70 and all the way down to number 136 in college football. In that event, a team like BYU, who had Quad 1 wins against Arizona on the road, the number 29 team in the country, wins against Utah, number 12 in the nation, number 27 Iowa State on the road, at Texas Tech, certainly a loss, but a Quad 1 win against number 23 TCU, and Quad 2 wins against teams like Cincinnati or Georgia Tech. Even Georgia Tech was a Quad 2 win. What you'd find, TJ, is a resume of a team that's 4-1 in Quad 1, 3-0 in Quad 2, 4-0 in Quad 3, and you can finally start to digest. It starts to make more sense to you when you say, hey, TCU basketball, listen to this, everybody as you're trying to piece it together. TCU basketball is 1-7 against Quad 1 opponents, and they're 8-2 against Quad 2 opponents. You can begin to understand just how good that team is, how good their resume is, based on the way we rank college basketball teams. If you do that in college football, it is yet another glaring metric to prove that BYU is one of the top 12 teams in the country, top 10 teams in the country. And you say, well, Miami's really good. They made the national championship game. They have NFL caliber talent across the defensive line. Well, yeah, BYU had one of the best linebacking cores in the country. And you say, well, yeah, but Miami's so good. Yeah, but based on what resume in the regular season, they lost to Louisville and SMU. And We saw BYU lose to Texas Tech and twice, and Texas Tech was a top 4 team in the country. As you start to ask these questions, I get Miami looked really, really good, but we didn't know that. Hindsight's always 2020. What was the metric? What was the metric that allowed the Canes in? What was the metric, more importantly, that allowed Alabama and Oklahoma in over BYU? Oh, well, they beat Tennessee. Well, they beat Missouri. That doesn't stack up when we talk about this opportunity, this metric opportunity, and trying to rank these teams more objectively. TJ, is it true? Is it true that in selecting the college football playoff this year, we didn't actually go off resume and instead said, you know what? Whatever brand is there, head-to-head, put them in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we always do. We always look at the number of losses, and we rank teams based on that. And the tiebreaker for the number of losses is head-to-head or conference affiliation. Yeah. Like, that's what it comes down to. Like, look at the rankings. Indiana undefeated, which they deserve to be. I'm not saying that they didn't. Yeah, Indiana undefeated. Then what'd you have next? All your 1-loss teams. Then what'd you have next? All your 2-loss teams. And then who missed the playoff? Well, Texas with a 3-loss. Oh, but wait, BYU only had 2 losses. Why didn't they get in over the other 2-loss teams that did make it?
Well, 3-loss Bama, right?
Bama, yeah. Well, we don't count conference championships. Championships.
Yeah. But BYU only has 1 loss, right?
That,
but it does count for the Big 12.
We don't count SEC conference championships.
Right.
Yeah, brand matters. I mean, ultimately, it just does. And that sucks, and that's not really fair. But brand absolutely matters. This playoff is and will continue to be. Now, we got great playoff games. I'm not. Miami Ole Miss was great.
Yeah, I'm not mad Miami got in. Yeah.
Miami Indiana was a good game, and I thought they gave Indiana as good of a game as anybody in the country could have. So I'm not down on them. And to be honest with you, we got good playoff games last year too. Notre Dame had a good run with good game against Penn State. Obviously, Ohio State deserved to be there. All those things. That said, this is a made-for-TV invitational. And I think the sooner people can wrap their minds around that, this is not a true, hey, we reward you like the NBA does or the NHL does or the MLB or the NFL for winning your division or winning your conference or winning these things. No, this is a made-for-TV ratings invitational. Yeah. Like, that's all this is. And let me just tell you, Alabama in the playoff looks better than Vandy in the playoffs. And to them, Notre Dame or Miami, to ESPN, looks better than BYU in the playoff. They just do. Like that. At just the end of the day, whether that's fair, whether that's right, whether you're objectively trying to measure teams and what their value is, what their rating is, how successful their resume or their season were, like none of that really matters to the people at ESPN. This is, which, they'll say, oh, well, ESPN doesn't control the playoff, BS. They don't care about any of that. This is what brands can we get in here to take care of ourselves, mostly the SEC. That's why they got 5 of the, did the SEC got 4 of the 7 at-large bids?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. They were the only team to, there were, Miami got an at-large, and then Ohio State and Indiana got at-large. Ohio State and Oregon got at-larges. Yeah. Everything else was the SEC. And they tried to keep Miami out, if not for that head-to-head with Notre Dame. Yep. So this is, again, maybe when we get to 16, it's a little better. Don't expect too much. Maybe if we get to 24, it's a little better. Again, don't expect too much. We will have a 7-5 Tennessee in when that happens. But
TJ,
that's what this playoff is.
Such a problem with this is that if we do go to 24, what's going to happen is we'll get to the round of 8, and there'll be 0 SEC teams and 2 Big 12 teams and 4 Big 10 teams and 2 ACC teams. And Greg Sankey was like, well, that's why I didn't want 24. Yeah. We're already playing a gauntlet of a conference schedule. Of course, our teams are going to lose in the playoff. That's why they don't want 24. It has nothing to do with competition. It has to do with the invitational being not rigged against the SEC, completely open and free for all. When it's free for everyone, open for everyone, even keel, that's where the SEC crumbles instantly, and teams like BYU can rise to the top. But instead, we take a new metric that would show you a very raw resume, like a net rating does in basketball, and it says, oh, look, BYU should be there. And collectively, the College Football Playoff Committee, controlled by ESPN, says, no, let's not do that. Come on, guys. Let's let in the big brands. That's all they're built to do.
The BCS was not perfect by any means, but an objective measure of how to make a championship was much better than a subjective group of 8, 10, 12 people sitting in a room deciding who gets in this thing and who doesn't. And the thing that I think made the BCS the best was that it did include some human element. They did take the polls into consideration, and we can hate on the polls as much as we want. And when there's a random offshoot of somebody will have a team ranked 15th and 16th, and that team just played each other. Somebody, watching Tulane, not to take shots there, will rank somebody 15th that just lost to the number 16 team. You do have those minor quips with the AP poll. By and large, the 100-person average, that never has an impact, right? Like the AP never comes out and the team that just beat the team, that doesn't happen, right? Week 10 happens and Alabama's behind LSU despite beating them in week 9. That never happens, right? So I do think the BCS not being perfect, but an objective measure for how to properly rate teams is something the sport needs. Whether it's this net rating, whether it's Massey, I don't care if they use Sangren, I don't care what they use as some kind of objective measure. They're not going to do this because a computer just spits out an algorithm and gives you a team. They want eyeballs every Tuesday night. They want us to tune in and watch. They want us to be watching on Sundays after Championship Saturday at noon. They want us tuning in to see what's going on. So they're not going to do this. But yes, of course, just being objective with it. And if you missed out on a BCS championship game because you were number 3, and if you missed out on the playoff because you were number 13 in the rankings, then you miss out, man. Here was the rubric. You didn't pass the test. If we would have had the BCS this year, and BYU would have finished 13th. BYU would have been, we should have done a little bit more. We should have done a little bit more to get there. When you have a people in a room committee that strategically drop you down to 11th so that you can't do anything but play your way in, that's where I think we look at this and say, yeah, it's a made for TV invitational. That's all it is.
Yep. And it's a ESPN made for TV invitational. Otherwise, teams like Indiana that proved to a lot of people that the Big Ten gets way more eyeballs, teams like that would have gotten much more love and respect. Think about how many more viewers Indiana would have gotten if ESPN had given them their fair shake over the course of this year and actually given them the publicity they deserved. ESPN lost money because they ignored Indiana over the course of the year.
Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
At Locked On Big 12, at Drake C. Toll.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, TJ.